The mining drone was 7 kilometers beneath the Pacific Ocean when it found something impossible. Deep in the darkness of the Mariana Trench, where no sunlight had ever reached, the small machine moved slowly across the ocean floor. It was searching for rare metals, just like it had done for 3 years. But on this day, in the year 2147, its sensors detected something strange. The drone stopped. Its computer tried to understand what it was seeing. The object was huge, bigger than anything that should be down here, and the metal it was made from did not match anything in the drone's database. Not iron, not steel, not any material known to humanity. The drone sent a signal to the surface. That signal would change everything. Admiral Kang Ti-ho was eating his breakfast when the call came. He was 58 years old, with gray hair and a face that had seen many storms at sea. He commanded the Earth Navy's Deep Recovery Division, a job that usually meant pulling up sunken ships and crashed satellites. Today would be different. "Sir, you need to see this," said the voice on the phone. "It's classified as Priority 1. Ti-ho put down his coffee and looked at the images on his screen. His heart began to beat faster. In 30 years of service, he had never seen anything like this. The shape on the ocean floor was not a ship. It was not a plane. It was not anything humans had ever built. Within 6 hours, Admiral Kang was aboard the deep salvage vessel Hyundai, steaming toward the coordinates in the Pacific. The ship was the best in the fleet, designed for impossible recovery missions. But this mission was beyond anything it was built for. Ti-ho stood on the bridge and watched the endless ocean. Earth had made contact with alien species 30 years ago. Humanity had joined the galactic community, though they were considered a young and primitive species. Other civilizations had traveled the stars for millions of years. Humans were newcomers, often ignored or dismissed. But no alien ship had ever been found on Earth before. Lieutenant Park Yi met the Admiral in the briefing room. He was 29 years old, strong and serious, the leader of the underwater recovery team. He had trained for years to work in the crushing darkness of the deep ocean. "The drone's data suggests the object is at least 200 meters long," Yi reported. "It's buried in sediment, probably been there for a very long time." "How long?" Ti-ho asked. "Initial estimates suggest millions of years, sir." The Admiral was quiet for a moment. Millions of years, long before humans existed, long before human civilization began. Something had crashed on Earth when the world was young, and it had been waiting in the darkness ever since. "We need a specialist," Ti-ho said, "someone who studies alien artifacts." Dr. Yoon Hana arrived by helicopter the next morning. She was 34 years old, with bright eyes and a quick mind. She was one of Earth's leading xenoarchaeologists, a scientist who studied ancient alien objects and civilizations. When she saw the drone footage, she forgot to breathe. "This is incredible," she whispered. "The design patterns, the hull configuration. This doesn't match any known species in the galactic database." "Could it be from a species we haven't met yet?" Yi asked. Hana shook her head slowly. "The Galactic Council has records of every spacefaring species for the past 100 million years. If this ship has been here for that long, it should be in those records." She paused. "Unless someone erased them." The Hyundai reached the dive site at midnight. The ocean was calm and black, reflecting the stars above. Somewhere far below, in the endless dark, the ancient ship waited. Lieutenant Park Yi and his team prepared for the dive. They would descend in a specially designed submersible, a small craft that could survive the crushing pressure of the deep ocean. At 7 kilometers down, the water pressure was enough to destroy most machines and kill any unprotected human instantly. "Be careful down there," Admiral Kang told them. "Observe and report. Do not touch anything until we understand what we're dealing with." Yi nodded. "Understood, sir." The submersible dropped into the water and began its long journey down. Inside, Yi and his 3 team members watched the darkness grow deeper and deeper. The lights of the surface world faded away. Soon there was nothing but black water all around them. 2 hours later, they reached the bottom. "There it is," said one of the crew members, his voice shaking. The submersible's lights fell upon something magnificent and terrible. The ship was half buried in the ocean floor, covered in millions of years of sediment. But its shape was still clear. It was elegant and strange, with curves and angles that seemed both beautiful and wrong. It was not made by human hands. It was not made by any hands they knew. Yi moved the submersible closer. As the light swept across the hull, he saw something else. Scars, burns, holes. "Dr. Yoon," he said into his radio, "the ship has damage, significant damage. It looks like weapons fire." On the surface, Hana leaned forward in her chair. "Can you describe the damage patterns?" "Large impact points, melted metal structural breaches. Someone attacked this ship. And sir, the weapon signatures don't match anything I've seen. Not human weapons, not any known alien weapons either." Admiral Kang and Dr. Yoon looked at each other. A ship from a species that didn't exist in any record. Weapons that no one recognized. Something very wrong had happened here, millions of years ago. "Continue the survey," Tiho ordered. The submersible circled the ancient vessel for 3 more hours. They mapped its surface, recorded every detail. The ship was 187 meters long, roughly the size of a large naval destroyer. Despite the damage and the years, much of it seemed intact. "Admiral," Yi called up, "I think we can recover this. It will be difficult, but it's possible." Tiho considered this. Pulling something this big from 7 kilometers down had never been done. It would require every ship in his fleet working perfectly together. One mistake could destroy the artifact forever. But he knew they had no choice. Something this important could not be left in the darkness. "Begin recovery preparations," he ordered. "We're bringing it up." As the submersible prepared to return to the surface, something happened. Ensign Nari, a young communications specialist aboard the Hyundai, saw something on her screen. She was only 24 years old, new to the fleet, but she knew immediately that what she was seeing was important. "Admiral," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I'm detecting an energy pulse from the ship. Very faint, but definitely there." "That's impossible," Hana said. "The ship has been down there for millions of years. No power source could last that long." But the readings didn't lie. Deep inside the ancient vessel, something was still alive. Something was still waiting. Admiral Kang Tiho looked out at the dark ocean. Somewhere below, beneath 7 kilometers of water and 65 million years of silence, a mystery was waking up. "Get our people back to the surface," he said quietly. "Then prepare for the biggest operation this Navy has ever seen." The ancient ship had waited long enough. Tomorrow, it would finally see the sun again. The sun rose over the Pacific Ocean, painting the water gold and red. 6 massive ships floated in a wide circle, their crews working with focused energy. At the center of this circle, beneath 7 kilometers of dark water, lay the ancient spacecraft. Admiral Kang Tiho had not slept. He stood on the bridge of the carrier Dokdo II, watching his fleet prepare for the impossible. Thick cables as strong as steel mountains hung from each ship, reaching down into the depths. At the end of those cables, attached to the alien vessel, were lifting platforms designed to carry the heaviest loads known to humanity. Today, they would lift something heavier than anything before. "All ships report ready, Admiral," said Captain Lee Su. She was 41 years old, the fleet's intelligence officer, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "We can begin on your order." Tiho looked at the calm water. Somewhere down there, the ancient ship waited. It had waited for 65 million years. It could wait a few more minutes. "Begin the lift," he said. The cables began to move. 6 ships worked together, their engines roaring with power. The tension on the cables grew slowly, carefully. Too fast and the cables would snap. Too uneven and the ancient ship would break apart. Lieutenant Park Yi watched from the deck of one of the support ships. He had spent the night preparing his team for whatever came next. Now all he could do was wait and hope. The first hour passed. The cables continued to lift. The readings showed the spacecraft rising slowly, 1 meter at a time, but it was still more than 6 kilometers down. Dr. Yoon Hana stayed in the science lab, watching the data streams. The faint energy pulse from the ship continued, steady and unchanging. She still could not explain what was powering it. No known technology could survive so long underwater. "The hull material is amazing," she told her assistant. "It's some kind of alloy we've never seen before. The pressure at that depth should have crushed it flat millions of years ago, but it's almost perfectly preserved." "What does that mean?" the assistant asked. "It means whoever built this ship had technology far beyond anything in the galaxy today," Hana said quietly. "Far beyond anything we thought possible." By the third hour, the news had spread. Satellites had detected the massive naval operation. Within minutes, images appeared on every news network on Earth. A huge shape rising from the deep ocean. An alien spacecraft older than humanity itself. The world stopped to watch. Admiral Kang had expected this. There was no way to hide 6 ships working together in the middle of the Pacific, but he had not expected what came next. "Sir," Ensign Beak Nari reported, "we're receiving transmissions from the Galactic Council. Multiple ambassadors are demanding to speak with you. They're very upset." T-Ho frowned. The Galactic Council was the governing body of all known spacefaring species. Earth was a junior member, with little power or influence. For the Council to contact them directly was unusual. For multiple ambassadors to make demands was unprecedented. "Put them through," he said. The main screen lit up with faces. 3 alien ambassadors, representing some of the most powerful species in the galaxy. Their expressions were hard to read, but their voices carried clear emotions. They were afraid. "Admiral Kang," said the first ambassador, a tall being with blue skin and 4 arms, "you must stop this operation immediately. That vessel must remain on the ocean floor." T-Ho kept his face calm. "With respect, Ambassador, this ship is on Earth's territory. Under galactic law, we have the right to investigate." "You don't understand what you're dealing with," said the second ambassador, smaller, with large dark eyes. "Some things should stay buried. Some knowledge is too dangerous." "Then tell me what we're dealing with," T-Ho said. "Tell me what this ship is and why you're so afraid of it." The ambassadors looked at each other. For a long moment, no one spoke. "We cannot tell you," the first ambassador finally said. "But we strongly advise you to stop. If you bring that ship to the surface, there will be consequences." The screen went dark. Captain Lee Su moved closer to the admiral. "Sir, that sounded like a threat." "It was a threat," T-Ho agreed. "But it was also something else. Did you see their faces? They weren't just angry, they were terrified." He turned back to the window. "Whatever is in that ship, the Galactic Council doesn't want us to find it. That means we need to find it." The lift continued. By the 10th hour, the ship had risen to 2 kilometers below the surface. The cables held strong. The crews worked in perfect coordination, but everyone was tired and the tension was growing. Lieutenant Park Yi gathered his dive team. "When the ship reaches the surface, we go in first. Full safety gear, full weapons. We don't know what's inside." "Do you think something is still alive in there?" one of his team asked. Yi thought about the energy pulse that Ensign Nari had detected. Something was still working inside that ancient hull. Something had power after 65 million years. "I think we need to be ready for anything," he said. Hour 14, hour 15, hour 16. The sun set and rose again. The crews worked in shifts, never stopping. The world continued to watch, holding its breath. Finally, at hour 17, the surface of the water began to change. Bubbles rose from below. The water churned and moved. And then slowly, impossibly, the nose of the ancient spacecraft broke through the waves. Dr. Yoon Hana ran to the deck to see. Tears formed in her eyes as the ship emerged. It was beautiful, even after all this time. The curves of its hull caught the sunlight, shining with colors that seemed to shift and flow. 65 million years at the bottom of the ocean, and it still looked like a work of art. But the damage was visible now too. Great scars ran along its sides. Holes pierced the hull in a dozen places. Whoever had shot this ship down had wanted it destroyed. "Get a platform ready," Admiral Kang ordered. "I want that ship secured and stable before we do anything else." It took another 3 hours to get the spacecraft fully above water and locked to a floating platform. By then, hundreds of smaller boats had gathered around the naval fleet. News helicopters circled overhead. The whole world was watching. Lieutenant Park Yi led his team onto the platform. They approached the ancient vessel slowly, weapons ready. Up close, it was even more impressive. The hull seemed to glow faintly, lit by some inner light. Dr. Yoon Hana joined them, along with a team of scientists carrying scanning equipment. She ran her hand along the hull, feeling the strange metal beneath her fingers. "I've never seen anything like this," she whispered. "The molecular structure is completely unknown. This isn't just advanced technology. This is beyond anything the galaxy has today." "Over here," Yi called out. He had found something on the side of the ship, a large rectangular shape covered in strange symbols. "This looks like a door." Hana examined the symbols. They were unlike any alien writing she had studied, but something about them felt familiar in a way she couldn't explain, like a song she had heard once, long ago, in a dream. "I think I can open it," she said. "I need a cutting laser." Captain Lee Soo arrived on the platform, her face serious. "The Galactic Council has issued a formal warning. They say we have no right to enter the vessel. They're threatening to send ships." Admiral Kang had come too. He looked at the ancient ship at the door waiting to be opened. Then he looked at Captain Lee Soo. "Let them come," he said. "This ship crashed on our planet. Whatever is inside belongs to humanity. Open the door." The cutting laser barely scratched the surface, but something about its energy triggered an ancient mechanism. After 65 million years of silence, the door began to move. The hatch slid open with a soft hiss. Air rushed out, carrying the smell of time itself. Cold, ancient air, trapped inside the ship since before humans existed. Captain Lee Soo stepped forward and shone her tactical light into the darkness. The beam cut through the shadows, revealing the interior of the ship. Rows of pods lined the walls, hundreds of them stretching back into the darkness. They looked like beds or coffins, made of glass and strange metal. And then in the shadows beyond the light, something moved. Lee Soo's hand went to her weapon. Beside her, Lieutenant Park Yi raised his rifle. Everyone on the platform went still. "What was that?" Hana whispered. No one answered. They stared into the darkness, waiting, hearts pounding. The ancient ship had risen from its grave. Now they would discover what had been sleeping inside it. The shadow moved again in the darkness. Lieutenant Park Yi raised his rifle and stepped forward, placing himself between the unknown threat and Dr. Yoon Hana. His heart was pounding, but his hands were steady. "Everyone stay calm," he said quietly. "Don't shoot unless I give the order." Captain Lee Soo kept her light pointed at the movement. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, the shape came into view. It was a small machine about the size of a dog. It moved on many legs like a spider, and its surface was covered in the same strange metal as the ship. When the light touched it, the machine stopped. Small lights on its body flickered weakly. "It's a drone," Hana said, her voice filled with wonder. "Some kind of maintenance robot. It's been keeping the ship running all this time." The machine made a soft sound, almost like a sigh, and then went still. Its lights faded away. After 65 million years of work, it had finally run out of power. "Poor thing," Ensign Nari said softly. She had followed the team onto the ship, unable to stay behind. It kept working all alone for so long. Admiral Kang Ti-ho stood at the entrance, watching his people explore. "Secure the area," he ordered. "Then we find out what this ship was carrying." The team moved deeper into the vessel. Their lights revealed more details. The walls were covered in panels and screens, all dark now. The floor was smooth and clean, untouched by the ocean water thanks to the incredible hull. Everything was preserved, as if the crew had left yesterday instead of millions of years ago. They found the pods first. 347 of them, arranged in long rows on both sides of the main corridor. Each pod was about 2 meters tall, made of a glass-like material that glowed faintly from within. Most of them were dark and cold, but some still had light. "These are stasis chambers," Hana explained, examining one of the dark pods. "The crew put themselves to sleep for a long journey. It's common technology in space travel." She paused, her face growing sad. "But most of these have failed. The power ran out millions of years ago." Yi looked through the glass of one failed pod. Inside was a shape, withered and ancient. Bones and dust, all that remained of whoever had slept there. He felt a deep sadness for these unknown beings who had traveled so far only to die in silence beneath an alien ocean. "How many survived?" he asked. Hana moved along the rows, checking each pod. Her assistants followed, making notes. The count took almost an hour. When it was done, she returned to Admiral Kang with the news. 342 failed, she said. But 5 pods are still active. 5 beings are still alive. The Admiral absorbed this information. "What kind of beings?" "We don't know yet. The glass is too clouded to see clearly. But, sir, the body shape, the size, they look similar to us. Very similar." This news spread quickly through the team. Beings that looked like humans, sleeping in a ship that crashed on Earth millions of years before humans existed. The mystery was growing deeper. Captain Lee Su found the archive room. It was a small chamber near the center of the ship, filled with machines that looked like computers. Most were dead, but one still flickered with weak power. "This must be their data storage," she reported. "If we can access it, we might learn who these people were." Ensign Nari stepped forward. Despite her young age, she was one of the best communications specialists in the fleet. "Let me try," she said. "I've worked with alien data systems before." She connected her portable equipment to the ancient machine. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, suddenly, the screen came to life. Strange symbols filled the display, scrolling rapidly. "I'm getting something," Nari said, excitement in her voice. "It's heavily damaged, but there's readable data here." Hana joined her, studying the symbols. At first, they made no sense. But as she looked longer, patterns began to emerge. The symbols were different from any known alien language, yet something about them felt natural to her human mind. "This is incredible," she whispered. It's like this language was designed to be understood by human-type brains, like they wanted us to read it eventually." Over the next several hours, Hana and Nari worked together to translate the fragmented records. What they found changed everything they thought they knew about the galaxy. The builders of this ship called themselves the Forerunners. They were an ancient species, the first to achieve space travel in this galaxy. For millions of years, they explored and built, spreading life and civilization across the stars. But they were not alone. Something else existed in the darkness between stars. The records called it the Silence. It was an enemy, a force that hated all organic life. The records did not explain what the silence was or where it came from, but they made clear what it wanted. Destruction, complete and total, every living thing wiped away, every civilization erased. The galaxy returned to empty darkness. The war lasted thousands of years. The Forerunners fought with all their power, but the silence was stronger. World after world fell. Species after species was destroyed. The Forerunners watched their children and allies disappear into nothing. In the end, they knew they could not win, so they made another plan. They built arcs, Hana translated, her voice shaking. Ships like this one, designed to carry survivors to hidden places. They scattered across the galaxy, hoping some would escape the silence. But this arc crashed, Yi said. The silence found them. The records showed the final battle. The ark was running toward a primitive world, a planet covered in jungles and ruled by giant reptiles. The silence caught them just as they reached the atmosphere. Weapons fire tore through the ship. They crashed into the ocean, sinking quickly into the depths. But the Forerunners were not finished. "There's more," Nari said. "The last entry made after the crash." Hana translated slowly, hardly believing what she was reading. The surviving crew knew they would die. Their ship was damaged, sinking, and help would never come. But they had one last chance to fight back against the silence. They carried genetic material, seeds of life, designed by Forerunner scientists over thousands of years. These seeds were meant to grow on primitive worlds, to evolve over millions of years into new, intelligent species. Species that would carry the Forerunners' legacy forward. With their last strength, the survivors released the seeds into Earth's oceans. "They seeded our planet," Hana said, tears running down her face. "They created the conditions for intelligent life to evolve. They created us." The room was silent. Admiral Kang stared at the ancient screen, his mind struggling to understand what he had just heard. Humanity was not an accident. They were not random products of evolution. They were the children of the Forerunners, designed to rise after their parents fell. "The galaxy never told us this," Captain Lee Su said, her voice hard. "The Galactic Council must know. They have records going back hundreds of millions of years. Why did they hide this?" The answer came from another fragment of data that Nari found. "The silence wasn't destroyed," she read. "The records say the Forerunners only put it to sleep. It's still out there waiting, and if it wakes up..." She didn't need to finish. If the silence woke up, it would continue what it started. It would finish destroying all life in the galaxy, including humanity. "The Council is afraid," Admiral Kang said slowly. "They've known about the silence for millions of years. They've been keeping quiet, hoping it stays asleep. And they don't want us digging up old secrets that might attract attention." Hana looked toward the 5 pods that still held living Forerunners. Their ancestors, their creators, beings who had sacrificed everything to give humanity a chance to exist. "We have to wake them," she said. "They're the only ones who know the full truth. They're the only ones who can tell us what we really are." Admiral Kang considered this. Waking ancient beings carried tremendous risk. They had no idea how the Forerunners would react to meeting their descendants, and the Galactic Council had made clear that there would be consequences for this recovery. But he also knew that humanity had a right to know their true history. They had a right to know who they really were. "Dr. Yoon," he said finally, "begin the awakening process. Let's meet our parents." Outside the ship, the sun was setting again. The world was watching and waiting, not knowing that inside this ancient vessel, the entire story of human existence was being rewritten. Humanity was not the galaxy's newcomers. They were the children of its oldest civilization, created in desperation and hope. And somewhere in the darkness of space, the silence was still sleeping, but nothing sleeps forever. The medical bay aboard the Docto II had been transformed into something strange and wonderful. Human medical equipment sat next to ancient Forerunner technology, pulled carefully from the crashed ship. Dr. Yoon Hana moved between the machines, checking readings and making preparations. One stasis pod stood in the center of the room. Inside, visible through the ancient glass, was a forerunner. She was tall, taller than any human, with smooth silver-blue skin and delicate features. Her eyes were closed in peaceful sleep, her long fingers folded across her chest. She looked almost human, almost familiar, like a painting of an ancestor from long ago. Her vital signs are stable, Hana reported to Admiral Kang Tiho. The stasis systems kept her alive all this time. She can be awakened safely. The Admiral stood at the window, watching the pod. His face showed the weight of the decision he was about to make. Behind him, Captain Lee Su and Lieutenant Park Yi waited in silence. The Galactic Council has sent 3 warships, Lee Su reported. They'll arrive in Earth's system within 24 hours. They're demanding we stop all operations and turn over the spacecraft. And if we refuse, Tiho asked. They haven't said, but their tone suggests they're prepared to use force. Yi stepped forward. Sir, we've analyzed the data from the ship's records. The Council has been hiding information about the Forerunners for millions of years. Every reference has been erased from their databases. They don't just know about the silence. They're terrified of it. They think keeping quiet will keep them safe, Lee Su added. They've spent ages hiding in the shadows, hoping the silence never wakes up, and now we're digging up the one thing they wanted to stay buried. Admiral Kang understood their fear. The silence was a threat beyond anything modern civilizations could fight. Staying quiet, staying hidden, made a certain kind of sense. But hiding was not the human way. Wake her, he said. Hana began the process. She worked carefully, following instructions that Ensign Beak Nari had translated from the ship's medical database. The pod systems hummed to life, beginning the long process of bringing a 65-million-year sleeper back to consciousness. It took 3 hours. 3 hours of careful work, monitoring readings, adjusting systems. The entire command staff stayed in the medical bay, watching and waiting. Finally, the Forerunner's eyes opened. They were deep gold like captured sunlight. They stared at the ceiling for a long moment, unfocused and confused. Then slowly, they turned to look at the humans gathered around her. Hana leaned forward, her heart pounding. "Hello," she said softly. "Can you understand me? You're safe. You're among friends." The Forerunner's mouth moved. At first, no sound came out. Then, in a voice rough from millions of years of sleep, she spoke. The words were in the Forerunner language, unknown and ancient. But Nari had prepared a translation device, built from the ship's communication systems. After a moment, the machine began to work. "Where?" the Forerunner whispered. "Where is this place?" "Earth," Hana said. "The planet where your ship crashed. You've been asleep for a very long time." The Forerunner closed her eyes. When she opened them again, they were filled with tears. "How long?" Hana hesitated. 65 million years. The Forerunner was silent for a long moment. Tears rolled down her silver-blue cheeks. Then slowly, she turned her head and looked directly at Dr. Yoon Hana. Her golden eyes studied Hana's face, her body, her human form. "You," she breathed, "you are our children." Hana felt her own tears start to fall. "Yes, we evolved from the genetic material your people released before the crash. We are your descendants." The Forerunner reached out with one trembling hand. Hana took it gently. The long fingers wrapped around her human hand, holding tight. "We hoped," the Forerunner whispered. "We prayed. When we fell, we thought all was lost, but we planted seeds and hoped that someday." She could not continue. She simply held Hana's hand and wept. Her name, they learned, was difficult for human tongues to pronounce. She told them to call her grandmother, in the human way. She had been a scientist aboard the Ark, one of the lead researchers who designed the genetic seeds. When she was strong enough to sit, Admiral Kang came to speak with her. "We have learned much from your ship's records," he said, "but much is still missing. We need to understand what happened. We need to understand the silence." Grandmother's face grew dark at the name. Even after 65 million years, the fear was still there. The silence was not a species, she explained. It was not alive in the way we understand life. It was a force, a program, created by beings from before our time. Those creators are long gone, but their weapon remained. What did it want? Yi asked. To return the galaxy to silence. To erase all life, all noise, all complexity. It was designed to clean, to sterilize, but it became something more. It became intelligent. It became cruel. She told them about the war, how the Forerunners had fought for thousands of years, how they had created weapons, built fleets, united every species they could find, and how, in the end, it was not enough. We could not destroy the silence, grandmother said, but we found a way to put it to sleep, a great machine built in secret that sent out a signal that dulled its intelligence. The silence did not die, it simply stopped. And it's still sleeping, Captain Li Su asked. When we fell, yes, it had been sleeping for only a few thousand years, but we knew it would not sleep forever. Someday it would wake. Someday life would have to face it again. Grandmother looked at Admiral Kang. That is why we created you, not just to survive, to fight, to finish what we could not. The Galactic Council knows about this, Tiho said. They've been hiding everything. Grandmother nodded slowly. We expected survivors from other species would learn of the silence eventually. Some would choose to prepare, others would choose to hide. Her golden eyes were sad. I am not surprised they chose to hide. It is the easier path. But not the right path, Hana said. No, not the right path. Grandmother tried to stand, and Yi quickly moved to help her. She was weak, but there was fire in her eyes. There is something else on the ship, something we never had time to use, a weapon that could destroy the silence permanently, but we could not activate it. It required a specific type of neural pattern that none of the Forerunners possessed. What kind of pattern? Nari asked. Grandmother looked at her, at all the humans in the room. Your kind. The weapon was designed to be activated by minds like yours. We built it for our children to use, hoping that evolution would create the right kind of thinkers. She smiled weakly. And it seems we succeeded. The news sent a shock through the room. A weapon that could end the silence. A weapon designed specifically for humans. The Forerunners had planned for this moment 65 million years ago. Where is the weapon? Admiral King asked. In the lower deck of the ship. We sealed it away to protect it from the crash, if it survived. We'll find it, Tiho said. He turned to his officers. Lieutenant Park, take a team back to the ship. Find the lower deck. Find this weapon. Yi nodded and hurried out. Grandmother watched him go, hope and fear mixing on her ancient face. If the weapon works, she said quietly, you can end the silence before it wakes. You can save the galaxy, but the Council will try to stop you. They believe silence and hiding is the only way to survive. They will not understand why you would take such a risk. Then we'll make them understand, Admiral Kang said, or we'll do it without them. Grandmother reached out and took his hand just as she had taken Hana's. You are truly our children, she said, brave, stubborn, unwilling to accept defeat. She smiled through her tears. We made you well. Outside the medical bay, through the ship's windows, 3 Galactic Council warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They hung in orbit around Earth, their weapons armed and ready. But on the deck of the recovered Forerunner ship, Lieutenant Park Yi had just opened a sealed hatch. Below him, in a chamber protected for 65 million years, something waited. Something that could change the fate of the entire galaxy. The moment of choice was coming. Humanity would have to decide what kind of species they wanted to be. One that hid in the shadows, hopping the darkness would pass them by. Or one that stood up and fought. Admiral Kang Tiho already knew which choice he would make. He was human after all. Fighting was what they did best. Lieutenant Park Yi descended into the lower deck of the ancient ship, his flashlight cutting through darkness that had lasted 65 million years. The chamber was smaller than he expected, and at its center stood a device unlike anything he had ever seen. It was beautiful and strange. A column of twisted metal rose from the floor, surrounded by rings of crystal that floated without any visible support. Soft light pulsed within the crystals, like a sleeping heartbeat. Despite its age, the device looked new, untouched by the damage that had scarred the rest of the ship. Admiral Yi reported through his radio, "I found it. The weapon is here. It looks incredible." On the Dokdo II, Admiral Kang Ti-ho received the news with a mix of relief and tension. Outside, 3 Galactic Council warships waited in orbit. Inside, Grandmother sat with Dr. Yoon Hana, explaining what needed to happen next. "The weapon generates a signal," Grandmother said, "a frequency that can reach across the entire galaxy. When activated, it will find every piece of the silence that still exists and shut it down permanently. But the signal requires a living mind to shape it, a human mind." "Why human specifically?" Hana asked. "The way your brains evolved. The neural connections, the electrical patterns. You think differently than we did, more creatively, more chaotically. We designed the weapon to need that kind of thinking. We hoped millions of years of evolution would produce minds powerful enough to use it." Captain Lee Su entered the room, her face serious. "The Council ships are hailing us. They demand we surrender the Forerunner ship and all its contents immediately. They say this is their final warning." Admiral Kang stood tall. "Open a channel. I want to speak to them." The main screen lit up with the faces of the alien commanders. The lead ship's captain was a creature of many eyes and scales, its voice cold and ancient. "Admiral Kang," it said, "you do not understand what you are doing. That ship contains dangerous technology. It must be sealed away forever, as we have done with all remnants of the Forerunners." "You mean hidden," Ti-ho replied. "Like you've hidden the truth about our origins, like you've hidden the truth about the silence." The alien captain's many eyes narrowed. "Some truths are too dangerous to know. The silence sleeps. It has slept for millions of years. If you use that weapon, if you send signals across the galaxy, you might wake it before the weapon can work. You could doom us all. And if we do nothing, how long until it wakes on its own?" The captain was silent for a moment. "We do not know, perhaps another million years, perhaps tomorrow. That is why we must be careful. That is why we must not take risks." Ti-ho stepped closer to the screen. "That's the difference between us. You're willing to wait and hope, to hide in the dark and pray the monster stays asleep. Humans don't do that. We face our problems. We fight them." "You are young and foolish," the captain said. "You have existed for only a tiny moment of galactic time. You do not understand how dangerous the universe can be." "No," Ti-ho said. "We understand perfectly. We've faced extinction before. Ice ages, plagues, wars, every time we survived. Every time we got stronger. The Forerunners knew this. That's why they created us. Not to hide, to fight. If you activate that weapon, we will stop you." "You can try." The screen went dark. A moment later, alarms began to sound. The Council ships were moving into attack formation. "All ships to battle stations," Admiral Kang ordered. "Protect the Forerunner vessel at all costs." The Earth fleet moved to intercept. They were outgunned by the Council ships, but they did not hesitate. Missiles launched. Energy shields flared. The battle for humanity's future had begun. Inside the medical bay, Grandmother listened to the sounds of combat with ancient eyes. She turned to Hana. "It is time. We must find someone to activate the weapon, someone with the right neural patterns." Hana helped her stand. "How do we know who's compatible?" "The weapon will recognize them. We need candidates. Young minds are often best, more flexible, more creative." Ensign Beeknari was still in the Forerunner ship, helping analyze data. When she heard she was needed in the lower deck, she did not hesitate. She climbed down to where Lieutenant Park Yi waited beside the ancient weapon. Nari, grandmother's voice came through the radio. I need you to touch the central column. The weapon will scan you. If you're compatible, it will begin to bond with your mind. Nari looked at the device with wide eyes. She was only 24 years old. Yesterday, she had been a simple communications officer. Now the fate of the galaxy might rest on her shoulders. I'm scared, she admitted. That is good, grandmother replied gently. Fear means you understand how important this is, but I believe in you. The Forerunners created humanity for this moment. You are ready. Nari took a deep breath. She stepped forward and placed her hand on the central column. Light exploded through the chamber. The crystal rings began to spin, faster and faster, filling the room with colors that had no names. Nari gasped as she felt something touch her mind. It was vast and ancient, the accumulated knowledge and hope of a dying civilization. She saw them, the Forerunners, millions of years ago, building this weapon with desperate hands. She felt their love for children they would never meet, their faith that someday, somehow, their sacrifice would mean something. And she saw the silence, a darkness that ate stars, a cold intelligence that hated all life. It was sleeping now, scattered across the galaxy in a million hidden places, but it was dreaming, and in its dreams it was starting to wake. I can feel it, Nari whispered. I can feel everything. The weapon has accepted you, grandmother said, her voice filled with emotion. You can send the signal. You can end the silence forever, but you must act now before it wakes fully. Above them, the battle continued. The Earth fleet was fighting bravely, but the Council ships were too powerful. One by one, human vessels were taking damage. They could not hold much longer. Do it, Nari, Admiral Kang said through the radio. Whatever happens to us, you have to send that signal. Save the galaxy. Nari closed her eyes. The weapon's power flowed through her mind, terrible and wonderful. She thought of her family back on Earth, her friends on the ship, the billions of humans who had lived and died never knowing where they really came from. She thought of the Forerunners, who had given everything so that she could stand here in this moment. She activated the weapon. The signal burst out from the ancient device, spreading at impossible speed across the galaxy. It touched every hidden piece of the silence, every sleeping fragment of the ancient enemy, and one by one, those fragments began to fail. Across the stars, dark machines that had waited millions of years for the moment to wake suddenly went still. Programs that had dreamed of destruction fell into true death. The silence, the great enemy of all life, died in its sleep, killed by the descendants of those it had tried to destroy so long ago. The Galactic Council ships stopped firing. Their commanders stared at their sensors in disbelief. The readings were clear. The silence was gone. After millions of years of fear, the galaxy was finally safe. On the Forerunner ship, Nari collapsed. Lieutenant Park Yi caught her before she hit the ground. She was exhausted but alive, her face peaceful. Did it work? She whispered. It worked, Yi said, smiling down at her. You did it, you saved everyone. Hours later, Admiral Kang Ti-ho stood in a chamber aboard the Dokdo II. Before him stood grandmother and the 4 other Forerunners who had been awakened. Around him were the leaders of the Earth Navy, along with holographic projections of representatives from every human nation. The Galactic Council had retreated in shock. Their warships had left Earth's system without another word. For the first time in millions of years, the galaxy had to face a future without the shadow of the silence hanging over it. All because of humanity. Grandmother stepped forward. Despite her weakness, she stood tall and proud. She looked at Admiral Kang, at all the humans who had fought and risked everything. Then slowly she bowed. It was a deep bow, the kind reserved for the greatest respect. The other 4 Forerunners joined her. When she straightened, there were tears in her golden eyes. We sent an ark to save our species, she said, and Dr. Yoon Hana translated for everyone to hear. Instead, we gave birth to something greater, The galaxy feared you were too young, too aggressive, too reckless. She smiled, and it was the smile of a mother proud of her children. They were right to fear. You are exactly what we hoped you would become. Admiral Kang bowed in return. You gave us life. You gave us purpose. We are honored to be your children. No, grandmother said, the honor is ours. You have exceeded every dream we ever had. The Forerunners are gone, but our legacy lives on. In you, in every human who will ever live. She reached out and took Kang's hand, and Hana's and Nari's. Her ancient fingers wrapped around theirs with warmth and love. Go forth, she said. Explore, build, create. The galaxy is yours now, not because you conquered it, but because you saved it. This is your inheritance, children of the Forerunners. Take it with our blessing. Outside the ship, the sun rose over the Pacific Ocean. Its light fell upon the ancient Forerunner vessel, illuminating the scars of battles fought 65 million years ago. Inside, humans and their ancestors stood together, connected across an ocean of time. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity, once dismissed as primitive newcomers, had proven themselves the true inheritors of the Forerunners' legacy. They had saved everyone while the rest of the universe cowered in silence. And somewhere, in the endless dark between stars, the last echoes of the silence faded away forever. The war that had lasted millions of years was finally over. Humanity had won. They were just getting started.